Hi, I'm back with another story. Pam Sorellis of Winged Horse Healing. Let me share. I realized I can share pictures of my critters first before I start talking about them. This is Fuersti, Fuersti. It's Austrian. It was his first person named him that. It means first means prince, and Fuersti is the diminutive, like my sweet little prince. This is a picture taken in the winter. Isn't he gorgeous? He's so handsome. He's got gray hair up there. He's 23 years old. He's been in my care since he was a year and a half old. And yeah, he's awesome. So even when he wasn't like mine, I don't believe in ownership of other beings, but he's mine now. But initially, till he was about 4, he wasn't mine, but he was in my care. Anyway, that's Fuersti. It's taken in the winter because this spring he got his hair so full of his forelock, so full of burrs that I had to cut it off. I couldn't get them out. And so he looks like a baby now. Babies don't have forelock. So anyway, I'm getting far afield of the story. Let me stop the share. So at the beginning of each of my talks, I give talks, and you can find it on my website, wingedhorsehealing.com. I give free 75 to 90-minute talks about animal communication in case you're not ready for a class or you just want to learn something about it. And the beginning of each talk and the beginning of each introductory class, I ask people to think about a time or times when they knew what their animals wanted there's no words, right? And I mean, communicators hear words often, but it's like, how did you just know? Like, when your dog wants to go out because they start whining or they grab the leash or that, whatever, when they want dinner, but think of some times, all the times that you communicate with your animals without words, nonverbal communication. You know what they want, you know what they're thinking. They give you side eye, right? I have a barn cat that gives me side eye. So here's a story about Fuersti that I hope doesn't get too long. It could be super long, but I'm going to try to make it short. He's an interesting guy. I should write a book about Fuersti. Really, he's something. He's kind of a doof, but he's also a phenomenal teacher. He teaches in my communication classes. And I didn't know till like 3 years ago. He asked me if he could assist, and I'm like, sure. And whew, he's something. He's something, and people hear him. Anyway, he can be a pain. I've spent a lot of time training him on the ground. He has good manners, but he will test you. He will test you to make sure who's in charge here. And so a few years ago, I got a new trimmer, barefoot trimmer. My horses don't wear shoes. They have a beautiful barefoot trimming. The person I had couldn't come to this location anymore, and so I got somebody else. He was horrible, absolutely horrible. I was in tears. I just lost Alika, my heart dog. And here's this new person, and I'm like, is she just like not going to come back? He was ridiculous. He was horrible. He would not stand still. He didn't rear, but he came up off his front feet. I'm like, oh God, I couldn't. I'm in there trying to. He would have never done that with me. And so I was trying to get him to behave, and it didn't work. Finally, fast forward, happened the second time. The third time he started up, and I said, look, there's nothing I can do to make him behave with you. He is testing you. You have to take care of this. Do you know how? And she had training in natural horsemanship. And I'm like, so why don't you do it? She said, I was asked to leave a barn because people thought it was too rough. And I'm like, oh no, she told me her training. No, please. And so what you do is you talk to the animal with your body in the way that a horse would. And they're not gentle. So she did not abuse my horse. Okay, so if you don't know natural horsemanship, I'm just telling you, she did not abuse my horse. She made it very clear, like with elbow to the rib, or she asked him to do things. And it wasn't about control. It was about communicating that right now, I'm the one in charge of this little thing that we're doing here. 5 minutes. And I was watching. It was pretty funny, actually, because you could see him processing in his head. Oh, okay. And he finally, deep sigh, and he went, He went and stuck his head in the corner of the stall. It was hilarious. And he just stood there completely emotionless while she did his feet. He was fine. And the next time, this is all prelude to the story. The next time when she came back, I didn't need a rope on his head. Didn't need, he just stood nothing. She just went in the stall and worked with him. She could just touch him and he'd move over, which is how he's trained. I can look at his hip and he will step over. So she was able to work with him. He did not give her one moment's problem. And as time went on, he became more, he adores her. He adores her. It became clear, she's been our trimmer for, I don't know, 3 years. Came clear at some point, he would prefer if I was not in the stall watching, because I like, we talk, I talk, you can tell. And he just, he wasn't giving her problem. He was like looking at me. So there you go. I didn't hear anything. He was just looking at me like, could you go somewhere else? So I did. We would do Tara together, especially now because she foundered last year and I want to see what's going on. And then, okay, go to Fuersti. No lead rope, no nothing. Door open to the stall. I go and I do my chores. Well, and he adores her. He adores her. And she usually stands with him for a few minutes afterwards and, strokes his neck, and he just adores her. I could tell you other stories, but this story, the other day she came and she brought a student. She's teaching the Jamie Jackson method of trimming, which is just brilliant and awesome. And unfortunately, he has moved to England. And so there's not as much training going on here with trimmers. She is the only certified trainer in the country. And I'm so blessed to have her because she's still trimming. Anyway, she came and she brought a student. Student went into the stall with her. I was kind of standing there too. And the student at one point was trimming him like, oh, how's he going to be? He was fine. I could see him processing that it was like, well, she's here with, I'm not going to mention names, she's here with, my bud, must be okay. He didn't want me there though. It's hilarious to me. So I'm like, okay. So at some point I left. I said, he'll be much better with you. I'll just leave. So I did. And they were finished. I came back. And the trimmer / teacher was saying something to her student. They were gathering up their things and they were walking out of the stall and she hadn't spent that extra time with him. I realized later that's what happened. She's stepping out and he looked and I went up to him to say something to him. I said, I'm getting your dinner now, it's coming. And I walked in and he very clearly said to me, but no words. I did not hear words. I just very clearly knew that he was not done with her, with their time, that he was unhappy their time had ended so soon. I can't tell you how I knew. It was just a feeling. And you get these feelings too, is the point of this. And I said, could you come back for a minute? He's not ready to let you go. He wants a kiss. He wants to kiss you or hug you. Could you come back? And she was like, oh, and she came back in and her student stayed out and I was standing in the doorway. And first she just looked at me. And her student, who had caught on to this very quickly, said, you're still here. Yeah, he didn't want me there. So he loves me, by the way. But this was his time with her, and he only gets it once a month, for like 20 minutes. So I backed away, but he could still see me watching. I wanted to see what he did. And then I backed away further, and when he didn't think that I was watching anymore, and I only watched for a second because I respected him wanting her alone, but I watched, and he wrapped his head around her. Just makes he adores her. He just needed to give her a hug. And she stroked his neck and whatever and she doesn't believe in animal communication, but there it is. There it is. So it was so sweet and so wonderful. And it put me in mind. So look at the times that this happens to you. But it put me in mind also of a time that I did some movement re-education work with a horse at a place where I was boarding. It was a woman who owned the farm. And her horse was so grateful for the work I'd done that she thanked me. She was really, and the owner got jealous. It was and never had me back. And I was right there at the barn. I don't think she needs this. I'm like, she just thanked me for it. So anyway, start looking at body language and how the eye they give you, or there's the obvious when when you yell at them they slink. But I'm not talking about, well, dogs. I don't mean that. Start looking at the subtle ways so that I want you to know that you're more. Those of you who don't think you can do this is who I'm talking to. You can. You're more tuned in to what's happening than you may be aware. And then come take a class. So once you know, you're like, oh yeah, I can do this. Let me take a class. So anyway, I teach. I give free. The talks are free. So go to my website, wingedhorsehealing.com, and just look on the thing under animal communication talks. And I do them on Zoom. If you live right by me in the Chicago area, I might come to your barn, but they're so much easier on Zoom for everybody to show up for 75, 90 minutes. And it's fun. So that's it. That's my story about my sweetie Fuersti and his girlfriend. And take care. Pam Sorrellis, wingedhorsehealing.com, and I'll see you next time.